the gods of the hot beverage help me get through filming while I should be in bed. Доброго вечора. So, Merry Christmas if you're celebrating it. It's December 25th. I'm sick as heck, but I want to have fun today. So I'm going to film a fun video, which is one of those that all of us do at the end of the year, and it's my favorite books of the year. Why did I put it so that you can immediately see what the book is? So, I some books this year. 66 at the moment, 67. And some of them were awful. You already seen that video probably. I hope. If you haven't, watch it, please. Here it is. So, and when I went back to look at my list, I realized that I read some pretty good books this year as well. I could name one of them off the top of my head, that's it. But I looked at my ratings and I remembered all those other wonderful books, and my problem is just my perception of time isn't really good, so I couldn't say that I read all the good books that I realized is good this year. So thank God for Goodreads and tracking and stuff like that. So let's go into the list immediately, and I'll just tell you about my favorite books this year. Number 1 is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. It's the book that took us all by storm, and I know that some people hate it and say that it's pretentious and they don't understand and stuff, and you know. But for me, it's one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. This encompasses perfectly the kind of book that I want to write one day. If you've read this and the feel that it has, that's what I want to write. That's how I feel inside. And this is a story about Piranesi. He lives in the house. And the house is this huge structure full of columns and windows and these huge statues of minotaurs and people and things happening in nature. The first floor of the house is flooded, the second one is in the clouds, and on the third, living things live. Piranesi catches fish, looks at birds, takes care of the house and the statues, and lives a very simple life. There is someone else in the house called the Other, who is Piranesi's friend, and Piranesi keeps a diary, and this is his journal. And this book was, it touched that little dark place in my soul that wants to go into deep philosophy, that wants to study astrophysics and astronomy and science and know how the universe works, but at the same time wants to go into the forest and dance naked praising the old gods. So if any of those things sound interesting to you, I think Piranesi might just be for you. Next book is Mythos by Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry is my favorite person in the world. I love him. He's amazing. Everything he's ever written is amazing. Everything he's been in is amazing. I enjoy everything this man does. And Mythos is number 1 in his so far 3-book series of Greek myth retellings. They're not like retellings like Circe and Medusa and stuff like that. He just tells the story the way it was. He does a lot of research. This man has an awfully ingenious brain, so he read so many other books, so much source material went into creating these. He tells you the myths from different perspectives and from his own point of view. So you might find something in here that you didn't know yet if you're into Greek mythology, or you might read everything that you've already known, but you will just enjoy it because it's fun to reacquaint yourself, reconnect with the things that you already love. This is brilliant. And I have number 2 and 3 already, which is Heroes and Troy respectively. And I cannot wait to read them in the new year and love them just as much. Next one is Oranges Are Not the Only Fruit by Jeanette Winterson. This is also one of my very favorite books now. Jeanette Winterson is brilliant. This is an autofiction novel about a young girl who was adopted into a fanatical Pentecostal family in this little town. And it's about her life in the church, how this was her entire life and what she thought she wanted to do with her life until she discovered that she is gay, and how her community didn't accept that or did accept that, and what happened to her after that, how she came into herself, realized who she is, and how she actually wants to live, whilst also coming of age and discovering her sexuality. This is brilliant. This was very, very beautiful. Jeanette Winterson is a gay woman, so, I mean, when I said autofiction, you probably guessed that. But a lot of her novels have this kind of same visceral, emotional feel to me. And this was beautiful and very I feel kind of like I want to reread this, because even though it had a lot of these very hard moments to read, it also had some kind of warmth and comfort in it for me. So yes, that was beautiful. Next one is How to Pronounce Knife by Suvankam Thamawongsa. This is short stories about Lao people who have immigrated, refugees and immigrants. And it's just short stories that often have nothing to do specifically with the fact that they are displaced from their home. And it's just about these people, but always there's an undercurrent of just being a person among other people, just like everybody else, no matter from where you are, even though I know there's a feel of missing your own culture quite often here, which is translated beautifully through like food, people from Laos who want their specific food and they don't have the ability to have it always in these stories. But in the end, the emotion that we connect through is not always connected to the place where we come from. So this was amazing. The short stories in here, some of them are only just a few pages, but the punch that each of them packs, even when it's just a little slice of life story about a family having dinner, was just amazing. So if you like short stories, this is conducive to a readathon, and just, if anything out of that as well sounded interesting, might be good for you. And the next one is Matilda by Roald Dahl. The best children's book in the world, and now I know why. I read this for a video where I was reading childhood classics that I never read as a child, and I'm glad that I read this as an adult, but I also think that I would have benefited from this book if I read it as a child. Because Matilda, she's a very smart girl, she's brilliant, she's a genius. But her family doesn't appreciate how smart she is, that she wants to read, that she wants to know the world and do all of these things. The only person who appreciates her is Miss Honey, her school teacher, who is this beautiful beam of light in an otherwise dark world for this brilliant girl. And it's about friendship, it's about how important family can be, but that also family is not always our blood relations. Sometimes it's okay to let go, and your found family can be so much better. The next one is The Fellowship of the Ring by J.R.R. Tolkien. Do I need to say anything else? Like, do I need to tell you what it's about? Probably everybody in the world and their mom, except for me, read this book. And this was the year when I read this, and I read The Two Towers, and I'm finishing The Return of the King right now. There's not much I want to say about this other than it was beautiful, it was brilliant, it was just as good as everybody told me it was going to be. I'm glad that now I can be a part of this world. I've already read Hobbit years ago, and it's one of my favorite books, so it felt really good to return to some of the same characters and places that I read in that book. And I'm really glad that my boyfriend got me these books for Christmas last year, and I feel kind of stupid that I'm only just now finishing the trilogy because I should have read them much quicker. But my problem with reading these books was that it's a bit dense with descriptions of scenery. And I have this thing where when he describes that to the west, a road ran down into the hills, and then descriptions of things. Tolkien always, like, there are maps and maps, there's so much detail. He knew everything about his world. And I'm trying to imagine that to the west a river ran down, and then there's a road, and then there's a bridge, and then there's a hill, and then there's a castle, and where it is. And I'm trying to imagine all of that, and it takes so much of my mental energy that I forget to read. And I'm just like sitting there trying to imagine, and I'm realizing that I read a whole paragraph and I don't understand anything because I've been trying to imagine that scenery. So it's kind of hard for me to let go of that and just to read and let it flow. So it happens with all the books where there's a lot of descriptive scenery. It's not just Tolkien. So, but other than that, yes, 5 stars, love it, amazing. Let's read more Tolkien this upcoming year. Okay. Next one is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I gave it 5 stars, but I'm not going to recommend it to you if you don't like cheesy stuff. It was a very sweet, very touching book. It ended exactly how I wanted it to end. It was beautiful. But it was full of these, like, known wisdoms I think if you like A Christmas Carol and things where like the villain is redeemed and stuff like that, you're going to enjoy this one, but you're going to hate it if you don't like rom-coms and cheesy films like that, things like that. Because it's too sweet. It's so sweet and gentle and full of these beautiful feelings. So I understand how some people could find that hard to process. But I thought it was lovely, and it just made me feel really good. So I thought that it was a beautiful book, but I know that he has another one that I feel like I want to read, but I just know that one is going to break my heart, so I'm just putting it off. But yes, this book was really sweet, and it's just like a warm blanket, a warm hug on a cold day. So maybe if you feel something like that, it would be a good read for you. The next one was Titus Grown by Mervyn Peake. This is the first one in a trilogy called Gormenghast. The second book is called Gormenghast, and the trilogy as well is called Gormenghast. Mervyn Peake unfortunately died before he could finish the books. This was not supposed to be a trilogy. This is going to be a long cycle, which is like when you read the third book, it feels a little disconnected from the entire story. I didn't really like the third book because I wanted to go back to the world that was before. His wife continued his work after he died from his notes. And even though I trust her, I still don't want to read them because it wouldn't be the same world. But the first and second books were brilliant. They are fantasy novels about Gormenghast, which is a sprawling castle, which is like a city where a lot of people live, and they are all somehow interconnected. They're all parts of the court. Titus Grown is the 78th Earl of Gormenghast. He's a baby in book number 1. He's just born there. And his father is still the Earl. And it's just a story of him growing up, of his dysfunctional family, of all the other courtiers who live in the court, the doctor, the nanny, and all the people. And even though it's a fantasy novel, no magic is ever mentioned, but it has the feel of a fantasy novel. It is also a very claustrophobic novel because you never leave Gormenghast. The only place where you go at one point as a reader is the village next to Gormenghast, and even the people that live there, they like never leave the outskirts. They are connected and tied to Gormenghast. It's a living organism that will never let you go once you are there. And that claustrophobic feel was such a hit. It was such a big feeling in this book, so that I just couldn't put it down. It was beautiful. It was amazing. And I wish there was more of them. But the first 2 are brilliant, and I hope you will like them. Next one is 30 Ways of Looking at a Fat Girl by Mona Awad. Awad? I still don't know how to pronounce her name, I'm sorry. I know that a lot of people hate this book, and it has a really low rating on Goodreads, like 2.71 or something like that, but I really liked it. And I think the only way that you can like it is if you look like me. And that's the only thing I'm gonna say. It's just a story about a young woman who is overweight, and she's battling it her whole life. Like, she's constantly trying to lose weight. And it's just these stories starting from her high school years up into her adulthood of constantly trying to lose weight, losing weight, gaining weight, and how it affects her life and her relationships with other people. And I think if you had a struggle like that, you will understand it. And if you haven't, you might find it awful and obnoxious, and I understand that. So, like, you've been warned. You've been warned when not to read this book. Next one is The Glass Hotel by Emily St. John Mandel. 5 stars. Brilliant, glorious, amazing. It's hard for me to explain what it's about. I read it in a vlog, and even though, like, while I was reading it and talking about it constantly, I realized that in that vlog, it's almost impossible to understand what I'm talking about. Because this book, it has multiple plot lines. They all kind of converge at one point. They are mostly all connected to this huge hotel that is almost entirely made like of glass. There are these glass windows that come out onto the forest and onto the lake in British Columbia. And all the people that are main characters or that appear in the story have at one point worked or stayed in this hotel. There is a huge financial scandal. Somebody goes to prison. Maybe there's like a little bit of supernatural something in there. And it's just filled with this evocative, soft, flowing writing. I think, like, probably if you have Annalise and Jean Mandel before, you know what I'm talking about, but this is my first book by her. I haven't read Station 11, so I don't know if it's similar, but I just know now that I really want to read Sea of Tranquility because everybody tells me that it's really similar to The Glass Hotel, and I just want the same thing, but like 2 degrees to the left. It was so good. It gave me sort of the same feelings as Piranesi did. It stroked the same nerve in my soul. So yeah. Maybe if you liked Piranesi, you would like this one. I don't know how to explain it other than that you just would, you know? The next one is The Drowning Kind by Jennifer McMahon. This is a thriller, and I really, rarely put thrillers in lists like this. Because thrillers, for me, they're like junk food. Like, I read 100 of them, and I forget almost all of them immediately, but I have a lot of fun when I'm reading them. But this one, oh, perfect. I quite enjoyed Into the Water when I read it, and I remember that I said that I liked it, but I wish it went darker. And The Drowning Kind went into the dark places that I wanted Into the Water to go. It's a story about 2 sisters. One of them dies, and the other one goes back to their childhood home to bury her and investigate and find out what happened. There is a pool back in their backyard that is connected to like these natural springs, and people are saying that it grants wishes. There's a second timeline point of view about a woman who used to live there near these pools. I don't want to mess up, but I think it was 150 or 100 years ago. And what happened to her? She made a wish in the pool. And I don't want to spoil anything else, but it was dark. It was moody. It was spooky and mysterious and so good. And if you want more of a description, I can give it to you if you feel like you want to read this, but you're not sure. I just don't want to spoil anything else because I just feel like you need to go into this book not knowing anything. It's so good. And the last one on this list of my 12 beautiful books is The Strangled Queen by Maurice Druon. Technically, I could pull the whole Accursed Kings series on this book because I read all 6 of them back to back this year, which is a thing I do now apparently, like reading series back to back. But The Strangled Queen is book number 2 in the series, and I suppose it's my favorite one. This is a book series about the French monarchy of the 14th century. It starts with King Philip the Fair, and then his children, next kings and stuff. And it's just so good. It's full of blood and murder and intrigue and people poisoning each other and just, marrying children to adult men for political profit. And there's just so much insanity in there. But you read it yes, there are certain historical inaccuracies. And I know that because my boyfriend is a historian. And every single time I would encounter something that I wasn't sure of or that I didn't understand in the books, I would come to him here, what does this mean? Is this? And he would explain to me in detail where the author was embellishing a little, where something was changed. So take the historical context with a tiny little grain of salt when you'll be reading them. But other than that, the description of everything that was going on, the intrigue, it's full of real characters. Real people that in history may have been mentioned once or twice somewhere, a line, just their name and occupation. But here they are full characters. They have their life. There are a few legendary intrigues that Maurice Druon created into plot lines in his books. And they are just so good. They are so beautiful. And actually, if you like, what is it? A Song of Ice and Fire, yes. Martin said that his books are actually inspired by Druon's. So if you like A Song of Ice and Fire, you might actually like The Accursed Kings. Here, I have a fun series for you to read. So, thank you for watching this video. I hope that you read a lot of wonderful books this year. Please tell me about your favorite reads of this year, and let us all pray or hope or cast a spell or whatever that next year, in 2023, you and I are going to read only amazing books, and that next year, this list of mine is going to be 100 names long. I will see you soon. Slava Ukraini!